Parcel Fabric meetup. Today we have Kees de Zoo presenting land administration, making it fit for purpose. And Kees is a principal consultant for land administration in a professional services department nowadays. And Kees, I'll hand it over to you where you can tell more about yourself.
Very good. Thank you very much, Amir. I hope you can all see my screen. It's shared. My name is Kees de Zeeuw. I'm the principal consultant at Esri nowadays, and I'm very happy to have you all here in this afternoon session. And I really want to take you along in the trip I made in making things fit for purpose, and I hope to convince you all about the importance of fit for purpose approaches. So thank you for joining in. I cannot see you, but I hope you can see at least my slides. I'm trying to get my out of my screen. Sorry, I have to do it this way. Thank you very much. Yeah. So what am I going to talk to you about? I am assuming that my audience today is mainly people from the GIS society or community. So I'll try to focus a bit on that approach. And I first want to talk with you about the challenges that we have in land administration. But I think for that it's also important that we realize what it's all about with registers and maps and the solutions that we provide. And so I will spend some time with you on that as well. Also, it's good to know what's out there. And one of the things that's out there, that's what we're going into today, is the fit for purpose land administration approach. And I will talk with you about that approach and how it affects all the work that we do in, for example, the Parcel Fabric, because I think that's also this community that's coming together here today. So I'll talk about fit for purpose and GIS. And I always like to wrap up something with there is a role for me, for you, for us. So what will be the challenges for us in the future, and what would we be able to work on together? I'm gonna ask Amir that if there's anything with the sound or my voice, please correct. Otherwise, I'll just continue talking because, as I said, I cannot see you, so I just go on my screen and hope that you can all follow me. So please correct me if there's something going wrong.
We can hear you loud and clear, please.
Very good, very good. So let me start with the reason for land administration. And I always like to start with this picture, and not because I like sleeping so much, but because I think this is what it's all about. It's about the customer of our customers, in fact. It's the citizen who wants to sleep without worrying about his property, without worrying if there's going to be his land going to be grabbed or anything like that. This is the ultimate goal why we are doing this work in land administration, to make people sleep relaxed and that they should not worry too much about a property, that it's well documented, well registered, and the relation from them with the land is well in the system of the government. So it's all about making people sleep well in the end. To do so, it's all about the people-land relationships, and this is a very simple representation of that. But it's about, you have people, you have land, and you want to register the rights and the relation between people and land. And talking in a system kind of approach, there should be some kind of population register at the one hand, where people are registered. There is a cadastral system at the other hand, where land is registered. And in the middle, there is the registry where you register the rights and the relation between these people and land. So land administration, and there are a lot of formal definitions of land administration, but in the end, it's all about people-land relationships. It sounds so easy, and at the same time, there's still so much to be done. This is the best estimation I've seen over the past few years. It's already 6 years old, but still, I'm still using it because Klaus Deininger of the World Bank, he did an effort in trying to identify how many parcels and plots are mapped and registered in the world. And I'll take out just one figure of this table, but his estimate was that about 24% worldwide is registered. So that means that there is still 3/4 of the world where there is no people-land relationships documented in a sense. And you can see also, of course, that there are big differences in different regions in the world. So there is still a lot to be done in the world. And I think that's also the reason why we're here together, to see how we can contribute to this development. And I like to call that land rights for all. And if I say land rights for all, I also mean really for all. It's not only for the rich, it's not only for the poor, it's not only for the nature conservation or for the big industry. It's about land registry for all. And there is a close relationship between effective land administration and the sustainable development goals. I took this image from the UN GGEM, who made the documentation on a framework for effective land administration. I will mention it later on as well. But you can see how the effective land administration supports the sustainable development goal, and how the sustainable development goals promote the use of effective land administration. All in the end to have land rights for all. So it's about people, profit, planet, partnership, and peace we are talking about. Now let me first start by getting into registers, maps, and the solutions, because I'm assuming today I'm talking to mainly geospatial community, to put it that way. And I think it's very good to realize that there are different people and different perspectives in our profession. Because the basic principle of our work is very easy. I mean, you write down in a document or on a paper the property of somebody. You can draw it on a map where it's located, and you archive it. And then in the end, you have what we call a land administration system. But there are different perspectives to look at it. And I think you are mainly maybe from the GIS specialist perspective looking at it, but I want to make you aware that there are other people like registers or lawyers or notaries or legal practitioners who look at it from a different perspective. And this different perspective can be that sometimes you don't speak the same language, you don't understand each other. And it should be realized that this is really happening at the time. It's also good to know that geospatial authorities are there in the world to archive this and to manage this and to get this information flow going. They should be able also to talk both the language of the registers and both the language of the GIS specialist. And maybe as a GIS specialist, you think, well, if I just have a map, a cadastral map, and I put the right attributes on it, I have my land administration done. But you should realize that maybe a lawyer or a registrar can think the same way. He says, if I just got a document and I just define very well in text what a property is, this is enough. There is no need for a map. So there's always this 2 points of view, and it's about bringing that together. And I think that's part of our job. We should realize that that's happening. And in the end, if you have this kind of a land administration system, there are all kinds of developments in society that can be supported or that are influencing what we are doing. If it's about valuation, tax paying, or mortgages or disputes or whatever is happening, I think it's important that we realize that this system of land administration should be a big contribution to this kind of developments. Let's put it into a typical kind of system. There are two systems. One is the land register, the other is a cadastral map, and they can be linked to each other based on indexes, based on an overview of what's happening. But related to that, there are the authentic source data, there are the archives. And these archives, the deeds and the titles, they are related to the land register, and the survey archives, they are related to the cadastral map. And all these different systems, they are related to each other. And in an ideal situation, this is done by the right indexes, by the right numbers, by the right overviews, and you have a very well functioning system. But the world sometimes looks a little bit different in practice. And these are just some pictures of different situations in the world. I'm I don't recall the places or where it is, but in practice, there's a lot of paperwork to be done. There's a lot of disorganized situations where you have to work. You can find any type of register and map in the world, and it's in practice therefore much more complicated than just the schematization that I draw on the board. It's easy to draw the schematization, but how to apply this in the real world is the second phase. Also, I think it's important to realize that I am talking today from a land administration perspective, and I'm really trying to convince you that land parcels are one of the fundamental data themes. But as you all know, there are much more data themes that are fundamental. So also the relation of land parcels to any other type of data that is for governments and for countries important to manage the country should also be guaranteed or should also be there. It's not only about the land parcels and people-land relationships that can help. There are a lot of other systems and data layers that should be in place to make this happen. Okay, so let's see what's out there, because there's a lot of things happening in the world, and I'm very glad that it's there. Because if we see that the legal certainty on land is the basic thing that we're looking after, there are already a lot of things in place, I think. There are country and regional implementations to work on it. In many parts of the world, there are also methods and approaches available, and fit for purpose is one of them I would like to talk with you about today. But there's also a lot of guidance in the world going on with international renowned systems on how to develop your land administration system. Again, this sounds very simple. You just have guidance. From the guidance, you use a method and an approach, and you do an implementation. And in the end, you have legal certainty. But there are a lot of factors that are influencing this, of course. Otherwise, we would have been much more than this 24% of Klaus Deininger, who said that the coverage is in the world. There is politics, there is leadership, there is knowledge, capacity, there is all kind of software and tools that influence it, the advisors that we are all trying to have. So there are a lot of factors influencing the work we are doing. So in the end, again, it's not as simple as a schematization is making it. There are also two important factors I want to pick out a little bit today, and I think that the one is upscaling and the other one is innovation, because I strongly believe in the work that we're doing that there is a real need to upscale it if we want to come to the coverage in the world that many more people got their land rights done. And we also need to use the technology and the ideas of tomorrow rather than only the technology and ideas of today. So innovation also is an important part. Well, if we look what's out there at this moment, I just gave some examples of the guidance and the methods and the solutions that are there. This is not a complete overview, but this is just what I know that's important at this moment. If we come to the guidance, I think the UN GGIM is doing a real good job. They have the IGIF, the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, but they also developed the Framework for Effective Land Administration, FILA. And they are two very helpful documents, I think, if it comes to guidance and also in getting policymakers into the theme of land administration. I think these are very helpful documents. Then there are the methods and approaches. And the land administration domain model will be mentioned again also today. An ISO standard that is used in land administration is an important one. And the one I'm going to talk about today, the fit for purpose land administration approach. So there are much more methods and approaches to land administration, but these are the two that I took out today. And then there are scalable solutions. I think the Netherlands, the Land at Scale program, is doing a great job in trying to upscale from pilots to bigger areas, come to solutions for land administration. And of course, I'm the Esri man today, and I'm with the Parcel Fabric. I think also the technology can really help in making things scalable. A lot of documentation available. I don't think you can see them on the bottom here, but you can read them all. But there is a lot of documentation available, and if you want to have more information on that, please let me know. Then I promise to take off two aspects. One is the upscaling, the other was innovation. And I think as I'm talking to GIS people today, it's very important to realize that the solution that you're providing to your customers, normally they will ask for everything. And that's logical, but everything is complex, everything is expensive, and everything takes a long time. So it's also, I think, part of our profession to realize that we should be able to start simple with something that's really fit for purpose, and I'll come to that. And that maybe that's a project where you start and that you develop it in a way that it can end up in a system of systems. But the first step should be fit for purpose in your system design. So there should be a way of upscaling. Also, your system that you're applying should be suitable for upscaling. I mean, if you develop something in a project and it works for 1,000 parcels, that's very fine, but it should in the end also work maybe for 1,000,000 parcels or for the whole country or the whole coverage. So also in developing your systems, I think you should be aware that there will be a demand in the future for upscaling. That doesn't mean that you have to start directly with the most upscale solution, but you should be aware that in your proposition that you start with something which is upscalable. And then the innovation. I think there is also a need for us in our profession to be innovative all the time. I always say with the technology of today, we're not going to achieve the sustainable development goals for 2030. We have to use the technology and the ideas of tomorrow. So we have to be continuously in a modus of innovation. Innovation is important in our profession to come to new ideas and to come to better solutions that really are helping people to have land rights for all in the end. Now let me step into fit for purpose. Fit for purpose was in first instance, first report written by the World Bank, written by Stieg Enemark, Robert McLaren, Chris Lemon, and Keith Bell. They came up with a proposition for fit for purpose land administration. And it's all about three aspects. It's about quality, it's about cost, and it's about time. That was the starting point to start with fit for purpose land administration, because we tend to think that like this restaurant that I show in this place, that there is a relation between the quality of what you make and the cost and the time that it takes. But in land administration, maybe it's a bit different, because what we are trying to promote is that it's good is good enough for the moment, but you should do it in a way that in the future it can be made better without starting all over again. So the quality is always in relation to the cost and to the speed which you can develop. Apart from that quality, cost, time relation, the fit for purpose approach is built around three frameworks. And the first one, and I think the most common to the people in this meeting, is about spatial framework. It's about everything that has to do with geospatial information. But we should also realize that land administration is also about a legal framework. It's also about an institutional framework. And we have seen many examples in the world where effort has been made to develop one of those three frameworks, and which were not successful because these three frameworks are related to each other. If you develop a spatial framework without having the legal framework in place, you can think of the most wild and innovative and best things to do. But if the law says you're not allowed to apply it, it won't work. Also, if you have a legal framework which is optimum and the spatial framework is really optimum, but there is no capacity, there is no institutional setting in a country to work on that, it will not succeed either in the future as well. So if you start development, there's always a relation between the three frameworks. And I think it's important to realize that those three frameworks should be in place if you start working on it. And you cannot just deny one of the other frameworks. Say, well, listen, I'm very good in GIS. I will develop a spatial framework which is optimum for you. Because in the end, you will see that if there is no legal framework in place, there is no institutions to work with it, nothing will happen in the end. And your investment has been not really realistic, I think, or really helpful either. So the balance between those three frameworks is very important, like the balance between the quality time and cost. It's a bit of an alternative way of thinking, and people always or very often think that fit for purpose is about having a very low quality, a very fast way of working. But it's not. It's a way of getting it started. It's about starting the right way so you can develop it into the future, into better systems and fit for the purpose of that time. But start developing it fit for the purpose of this time. And in very many cases, this is about having land or tenure security for people. And you need maybe less data than having a full tax system or whatever based on your land administration system. So start fit for the purpose of today, but think also about the purpose of the future, because the society changes all the times, and also I think the requirements of the society will develop accordingly. It's about thinking in a different way, and I think this is really where a great job was done with the introduction of fit for purpose, to try to start make people think the other way, how to collect your data, how to work with your people, and how to have this balance between these three different frameworks. If we go into the geospatial framework, for example, very often it's said, well, there's only one way to do it. It's with total stations and with all kind of accuracy of the centimeter accuracy, because then you have through tenure security, it's a centimeter precision. But in many cases, this is not the first step. This is not the necessary thing to do. Maybe this decimeter precision using just an app and people walking around in the field with their GPS is enough for the first step to have tenure security for people. And maybe even more general than that, sometimes you can already subtract a lot of the parcel limitations from satellite or satellite imagery, and maybe having just a meter precision at the start. But do it in a way that you can develop over time. If you start with the meter precision, maybe in the future you will come to the centimeter precision and you have to develop towards that, but it should be in a way that you don't have to start all over again if you want another system. So make it scalable, both in time but also in precision. If we go to the legal framework, you can have the same kind of development. I mean, if you want a very formal system which is up to date or whatever, it will take you a lot of time and a lot of cost to develop it. But sometimes you can start easier. You can start in an informal setting. You can have even bottom-up initiatives that are really promoting land administration in the right way, and through local initiatives go into the next step. I get a big message now in my screen. I hope this is not affecting you. Are you still hearing me or not? I mean, I'm just checking with you.
Yeah, we can still hear you, and we only see your slide.
Yeah, okay, very good. Now, I have a big box in my screen now that I cannot get rid of, but that's let's hope that it will disappear after. So the legal framework, from informal land rights maybe to very formal land rights, and there should be an incremental development possibility in that one as well. And finally, the institutional framework, which is very different in many places of the world, and there is no one correct institutional framework, but it should be a framework that fits the purpose of the country and the purpose of the people in the country. And I think the Mozambique example is of course a very poor one, but there should be steps made to come from an archive or paper-based towards the next system. That's really a challenge. And if you look at other countries that I just gave some examples here, you will all recognize the different settings that you've seen institutionally all over the world. Also in the purpose, I think there is a scalability, or there's a different level. It can be very complex, but it can also be much more simple or less complex, at least in what you want to do with your system. And it might be that at the beginning, just improvement of services is your first step that you want to make, and you don't want to go on all kind of more developed kind of methodologies. So that can be a very simple application that you need at the beginning, and you need also a very maybe simple system to start with. But you should be able over time to develop yourself towards more complex systems in the time, because societies change and the demand will increase with at the moment that you implement your system. So in the end, it can be even going up to economic development planning that you want to do with your land administration system. And you should be aware that there is a line on which you can move, but never start by defining that the final goal is the reason why you built your system. Make it gradually gradual development. So according to this line, I think I also can plot the things that we are discussing before if it comes to scalability and innovation. Projects, systems, cloud services, geospatial infrastructures, it's all getting more and more complex, but start at the beginning and end at a more complex situation in the future. And also the same for innovation. The innovation should helping us in developing better systems that can be more complex, but let's start as where we are now. Just to give you some examples, and now I go a little bit back to my time at Cadastre International, because that's where my own implementation practice is, of course, mostly just giving you a few overview of the projects that have been done there. This is an overview that was provided to me by Christian Lemon. This, to his knowledge, are at this moment the places in the world where fit-for-purpose applications, implementations are made. And you see that there is already quite some coverage in the world where people are really trying to develop their system in a fit-for-purpose way. There's a lot of documentation available. Again, I put some of the reports here in very small. I'm not sure if you can read it. But again, I think especially Stig Enemark and Robin McLaren and Christian Lemon play an important role in this, in writing these documents, and they're all available nowadays to get you acquainted of the methodology. First example that I would like to give is one in Colombia. I think many of you have seen this before, where smart devices have been used, the RTK, use of RGIS, but also the LADM system, and really been make improvements that are really fit for purpose for the situation in Colombia. Another example is Nepal, where they're using more visual boundaries and satellite imagery to come to a very first rough indication of the parcel boundaries, and really helpful in the situation of Nepal. Another one is Indonesia, where participative mapping and the use of LADM is really helping the people to get their data collected in a fit-for-purpose manner that's really fitting the purpose for these people. Indonesia is a very big country with a lot of different islands, and it's really complicated to get big steps in a one map policy in Indonesia done if you don't use the power of the people and to do some participative mapping in the country. So getting back from the examples, I would like to mention a few things about the system design, and I'm a little bit going into Parcel Fabric as well, because we are in a Parcel Fabric meetup, of course, today. So I'm now trying to make the connection between the fit for purpose approach and the system designs that we are doing. So maybe it's a bit of a recap, but if you're in system design, there are three important things. Consider the institutional framework, the legal framework, and the geospatial framework. I hope that this is something that you will recall after this meetup, that those three elements should also be in your system design. And the second part is make it scalable, make it sustainable, and make it affordable. And I remember that almost every presentation I've seen from Stig Enemark on fit for purpose, always the first thing he said is, don't start something you cannot sustain. It was really a kind of basic message that was in every presentation, and I think that's really true and really important. You should start something only if you are sure you can sustain it. Don't start something that you cannot sustain, because in the end maybe the introduction of the problem is bigger than if you didn't do anything. So it should be really a sustainable solution you're trying to work towards. Now let me go a bit to the GIS solutions and build up towards the Parcel Fabric. If I look at the GIS solutions that I'm working now with the GIS at Esri, you see that they are scalable, and I think that's very important. We can do maybe a Parcel Fabric for 1,000 parcels, but it can also be applied for 1 million parcels or for 10 million parcels. So the scalability is very important. Also the sustainability, I think. I will come to that later, but the Parcel Fabric is developed to support us for the coming 15 or 20 years. So there is a sustainability thought in the development. And I think also the fact that Parcel Fabric is here is also showing that there is innovation in our field of work. Another point that I would like to mention today, that there is a land administration modernization program, which is really focusing on developing countries to see if we can help, if we can support them with their licenses and everything to get things started. And I think that's a very important prerequisite to use this technology. Otherwise, it will be maybe very difficult for countries to start using that. If you look at the GIS solutions that we have, I think there are 3 important parts that we are aware of. One is a system of records. So you have to collect data, you have to put it in a system. We call it a system of records. Based on that, you should be able to do some analysis on that one. So the analytics part, which is a system of insight. And finally, there should be some possibility to share your data, to share your information with people, and we call it a system of engagement. So this system of records, insight, and engagement, these 3 parts, is very important in developing your GIS solution. And if you look at ArcGIS, and I know that this audience are mainly ArcGIS users, I think there is the Parcel Fabric, but it's also the Survey 1 to 3, the field maps. Sometimes it's also about an enterprise architecture or a workflow manager. There are a lot of components in your GIS solution that should be part of the things that you're building. But again, start simple and work towards a more complex situation according to the needs of your customers. To put it a bit more in the land administration solution area that we are working with, I think there is a collection of data, the management of data, the analyzing of data, and the sharing of data. And if you connect that to our land administration field of work, then you see there are field operations, the parcel management, then, for example, the valuation, the property valuation, and finally the stakeholder engagement. Well, this is just a way to express it more specific into our field of work in the land administration, but you see that the software is supporting that part. Going into the Parcel Fabric, because this is the Parcel Fabric beat up, I think an important part of it, and I know Amir is the real expert if it comes to the real tricky questions. I'm going to ask the support of Amir, of course, but there is an LADM integration, and I think that's an important start for using the Parcel Fabric. And there are also a lot of countries nowadays already that have their country profile ready in LADM. This is not Esri related, but these are just countries that have an LADM setup of their system for which the Parcel Fabric can be used as well. It can be also used without LADM, of course, but I always say, why shouldn't you use all this expertise that has been gathered in LADM? And I'm not about promoting that you use an ISO standard or an LADM standard, but at least use the technology and the expertise that's all there in the LADM standard. If you look at the parcel management capabilities of the Parcel Fabric, there are really, and I think you have been doing many meetups before on this item, so I'm repeating a bit maybe the words of Amir, but it's parcel editing in ArcGIS Pro. It's about the quality of the parcels, but also the history. There is a versioning of the data related to the parcels, and there is also this connection between the legal and the physical world, and the legal source, to put it that way. Well, and I go just down to this last point because that I think is always very important. The last word in this slide is it's scalable, and I think this is really something very important, that you can use it for a small scale or a starting point, but you can also continue working with it even if the number of parcels and everything is getting bigger and bigger, and also the workflows are getting more complex. As said, it's a sustainable solution. It's designed for the next 15 to 20 years. It supports both record-driven workflows and quality-driven workflows. In the future, and maybe for some countries already today, there is about 3D, so it should be prepared for that. There it is coordinate-based. It works anywhere, any client, any cadastral system, any land description. And we think, well, I think that is easy to adopt and fast to deploy. And again, it's efficient, scalable, and configurable. So I think there are a lot of good things about Parcel Fabric, but still, you also need to develop the capacity. So also in your institutional framework, you need to have the right people in place to be able to use this. Also in your legal framework, you have to look at whatever you're trying to do in your Parcel Fabric, if it really fits the laws and everything in your country, or that you have to adapt to that. That brings me to my wrap up a bit of this session, because I try to give you a lot of ideas on how fit for purpose influences the world that we are working in, if it's come to the GIS part and to the Parcel Fabric application. But as I showed at the beginning, there is still a lot of work to be done. There are billions of people to go, put here. And if you look at 75% of the world, or an estimation of that still have no people-land relationships documented, there is a lot of work to be done, not only for me, not only for you, but for everybody. And we really should cooperate on that to make this happen, because it's really a very valuable part of making a sustainable world. There is a need for a global community, so let's build it. I mean, there was always the Land of Poverty conference, which was a good way to do it. There is the FIG conference coming up again this year. There are a lot of opportunities to work together and to build this community, but let's do that. And I think also what we are doing today, using the online version, I think is very important, that we build this community and that we work together on that. And this cooperation is not only about governments working together, or NGOs, or researchers or scientists, or the private sector. I think it's really about finding each other and making it happen. And I think there is a role for everyone. There is no need to think that there is only one player that should define it. I think it's all about getting all the stakeholders on board and work together. It's also about the necessity to have an alternative way of thinking. I mean, even within fit for purpose, there is room for develop new ideas to come to a next step, because there will be developments and there will be innovation. So also based on the technology and ideas of tomorrow, we have to adapt to that. So be fit for purpose, not only today, but also tomorrow. So to come to a conclusion, and I think time-wise, I did quite okay. I promised to make it about 45 minutes, so I'm doing with 40, I think. The conclusion is, make it scalable, make it sustainable, make it attainable, and do it incremental. I think this is the message that I would like to give to you today, and that makes do it fit for purpose. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope it has been clear. It's always a bit strange talking to a screen in yourself, but I hope that I reached many of you, and that I put some inspiration on the table to work on this in the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Kees. And again, if there's any questions, or if somebody wants to speak up and start this discussion, please put it in the questions or the chat, and we can happen. Maybe a question from me until we see some other questions, Kees. Is fit for purpose only for developing countries, or do you see it encompassing also the?
No, it's often referred to for developing countries, because that's where the biggest challenges are at this moment. But also a developed country has to make a system that's fit for purpose, and sometimes the purpose is different than maybe in a developed country than in a developing country. But you should make your systems in such a way that we develop something that is for the purpose at that country at that specific moment. And you should realize that any country, I would say that's the beauty of our work. The moment we are finished, the world has changed again, and there are new requirements, and we have to develop new things. So societies keep on developing themselves, and also our work should be developing with them.
And maybe another question: do you see artificial intelligence come to play in this?
Yeah. It's really happening, I think, and it might even be one of the I mean, and I know we said it with blockchain developments as well, the time that would be the next phase in our developments. But at this moment, I see a lot of things going on in artificial intelligence, and I'm sure that it will be affecting our work. And if I say, let's use the technology of tomorrow, this might be very well one of the technologies of tomorrow that really can help us in accelerating this development of land rights for all. So yes, it will be there.
And this question was not prepared by ChatGPT, by the way.
Yeah.
There's a question from Chris Lemon. Could you compare your solutions with open source solutions? Is your solution more complete? Maybe. Well, I don't know all the open source solutions out there for myself, but maybe that's a question for you, Kees.
Yeah. Sorry, my system is fully blocked, so I cannot see any question. I just talk to a screen without. But the question is, if there are other solutions, then COTS.
Basically, compare the Esri solutions that we offer to the open source solutions, if there is such a thing. I don't know. There's a variety of different open source plugins, I think.
Yes, yeah. Both in the register part as in the cadastral part, there are closed source, open source. There are all kinds of solutions. I'm working for Esri now, so maybe I should say that our solution is the best, but that's not what I want to the message I bring out today. I want to bring out the message today that there are still 75% of the world that is without land relationships. Whatever we can do to help them, we should do, and there is room for everybody and everything. Sometimes it's better to use maybe an open source solution because that's the way you can handle it. Sometimes it might be a closed source or a COTS solution. It depends really on the situation. There is no one answer to everything. And I really believe that by developing together, I think that's the most important part, that we are really trying to improve the situation. That's what we hear. It's also the reason I joined Esri, because I really believe that this is a possibility to scale up in a part of the world where we are using this solution. But there are other parts as well. So I don't think, and I think Christian Lemon knows very well, there is not an answer, yes or no, you should use the one or the other. There is room for everything and for everybody. And I think that's what we should realize when we work on this world.
And I'll just add that a lot of components in ArcGIS, including the Parcel Fabric, use open source, like the use of the Dynadjust least square engine from Geoscience Australia. So we collaborate, we cooperate, we even contribute sometimes to some of the open source libraries. Another question from Miguel Sanjines. I hope I pronounce your name properly. The Parcel Fabric is Esri proprietary, works well with the data collection and post-processing. What happens after data collection? If we need to host mandatory in Esri, what if there's an existing system in the country? How to deal with that? So maybe that's more a technical question. Should I take that one?
Yes. So I think Amir, I'm so happy you're here.
So finally I'm useful. So the Parcel Fabric, so the Parcel Fabric uses simple feature classes, and it can publish those feature classes using web services. Those web services can be in the Esri proprietary format, the feature services, but it can also be published using WFS, which is an open source OGC format, or KML, and consumed by the other types of clients. Furthermore, it can be exported to other formats, like to DWG for a CAD format, and GeoPackage, GeoJSON, I think, and others. So the data is the greatest asset. The Parcel Fabric is how to control, maintain it in an efficient way, but it can be shared live in a variety of ways, or using ETL, extract, transform, and load, shifted to other formats that might be more appropriate for other systems, if that's the case. I hope that answered Miguel. There's another question from Michael Greer. is it only possible in countries where the local government supports the idea? So maybe.
Yeah, I always say in the end, land administration is where the ideas of people come together with the ideas of governments. So I think there's always a need in the end that governments come into this approach. But sometimes to get things started, a bottom-up initiative from an NGO or a local society whatsoever is really helpful in getting the government involved. It's not everywhere in the world that governments take the right approach and the right responsibility to do so. So I think in the end, land administration is always about where governments are doing the right job for their citizens. So yes, in the long term, there should be a government involvement. But to get things done and to get things started, it's very often that bottom-up initiatives, and not only top-down initiatives, bottom-up initiatives are very important to get things in place and started. So, but even if you start with a bottom-up approach, do it in a way that in the end, it will fit to something that is required by a government. Otherwise, again, you have a very nice bottom-up initiative with all kind of description of people-land relationships, but it's not applicable at a large scale, and you will have to start all over again. And that's a bit of pity.
Yeah. Related to the SDGs, a question from Darius Golker, I'll read it. Not being able to achieve SDGs by 2030 without the use of technologies. Do you have any good resources or data to demonstrate this? For example, I read that in Uganda, there are only 73 registered surveyors, and it would take them 1,000 years to map all of the millions of unregistered lands.
Yeah. So that's my call for a new way of thinking. I mean, if you stick to the idea that the only way to register a parcel is by a chartered surveyor or with somebody who did 4 years of training to get it done, you indeed, in many cases, in many places in the world, it will take a long time to get it done. So there should be alternative ways. And it can be that after you started in a simple way by just using satellite imagery or whatever, that in the future you will come to that surveying part and come to this precision. But it should not be your only approach, because otherwise, and we have done in the past many calculations for many countries, that the development they were in with the technology and the ideas of today, that it would take at least 1,000 years or something like that to get things done. Which for workload-wise is wonderful news, but for a society it's bad news, because we don't have time to wait for 1,000 hours, 1,000 years to get it done. Many people need their tenure security, all people need their tenure security rather today than tomorrow. So it's also about really having a new approach and a new idea how to achieve it.
And I think, Case, that was the last question so far. Does anyone has another question, maybe quickly type it in. Otherwise, I would just want to say thank you, Case.
Yes. I would like to thank all participants today, because unfortunately I'm not able to see you. That makes it really complicated, and my system is stuck, so I cannot react to your questions as well. But I'm very glad that you all participated, and I say goodbye, not from the Netherlands, but from Morocco, where I'm at this moment. And I'm very happy that also technology didn't fail, that we really have a wonderful connection to you today. So thank you all for participating.
In case, maybe, do you have contact details if somebody wanted to contact you?
Yes, I didn't put it in the slide, I think, but it's KDEZEEUW, so K de Zeeuw, at esri.com. So please contact me at my email at esri, and I'm happy to respond to you.
Thank you very much, Case, and everybody have a fruitful day.
Yeah, and thank you for guiding us through today, Amir. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.